Hi, our guests today are Superintendent of Schools Bob Tremblay, Assistant Superintendent Kevin McIntyre, and as most of you know, at the end of June, Bob will be leaving to become the superintendent in Weston, Mass., and Kevin will be taking over as superintendent. So I think this is the first time we've got you both in a room since, Bob, you gave notice that you're leaving, and then the school committee very quickly named you, Kevin.
Absolutely.
So welcome.
Welcome, and we'll have a mat here so you all can fight and arm wrestle.
Now, I'm told, Bob, by your wife, that you guys are like twins. What does that mean?
You don't look alike.
The French-Canadian-Irish twins.
Oh, there we go.
So-
No, you're very similar in temperament and thought pattern, I guess.
Yeah, well, Kevin and I have worked. Kevin was a great find for Milford Schools back, 3 years ago now, when he came to us from Tewksbury, and I'd always thought of that position as someone who could succeed me, even though I hadn't planned to be looking. Wanted to make sure that you always had that
Backup, yeah.
person available in the district who
That's
could
just good management.
who could capably lead the district in my absence.
Yeah, I always
You know,
call it, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, who takes my
exactly.
place?
And if I'm going to go, it will probably be by a bus. So it'll just be poetic justice. So I.
Now, is that a bus for the pre-K at 700 grand a year? Or is it, sorry.
You're very well informed about the recent discussions around budget. That's good. So Kevin is a great. We're very like-minded in terms of how we approach curriculum instruction, assessment, just education of children, valuing staff, professional development, and our personalities are very similar in that regard as
Now,
well.
did either of you have any idea before that school committee meeting that they were going to name you?
No, it was really a big surprise. I mean, I was very interested in obviously the role, but I had no idea that they were going to make an appointment.
Bob, did you?
That night.
Did anybody consult you and say, what do you think of
No,
Kevin as your replacement?
Not at all. I was actually pretty out front with those, saying, when I spoke with the chair and the vice chair and ultimately a member of the school committee saying that I'd be leaving, I did advocate strongly for Kevin, saying that, he'd been working with me together for the last 3 years. It would just be stepping in. We wouldn't, there'd be nothing lost in the transition. And that's
It
particularly
does make
important
the
here.
transition a lot easier.
It certainly does. We still have several months together, but we've been working together for 3 years. To bring somebody up to speed on the operation would be, you could potentially lose momentum. In this regard, we won't. And there's a lot of serious work happening right now in the district with the new Woodland project, a school about to open. It's not the time to really be training somebody
If
who's
only you
green.
could convince the neighbor over on Colonial Drive that the heating system coming on is not the building burning down. For the second time in 2 months, he called up the fire department this weekend, telling him the building was on fire.
Greg called me on his way to Woodland School to tell me that, yeah.
I'm sorry, I hear this on the scanner, and even the dispatchers, the public safety dispatchers were going, well, the same guy is the one who called up the last time, and it was the heating system. And then you hear the firemen get there and go, it's the heating system.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just
Better
had to
safe
throw
than
that one
sorry
in.
when you have a $61 million project.
$61 million project, you want to be there.
Which is going to be done by what, June?
Right now, July 28th, on or around July 28th, which is right on schedule for us, is the
So you won't get to see it.
Well, I'm sure I'll come back. I still live in Mendon.
I was going to say,
they.
they let Frank Sabas stay at the hospital when he gave notice right until the new building opens. So, Kevin, you're going to let him back in to look at it?
Well, it is funny, though, you said
I'd
this,
charge
because
you, though. I wouldn't let him in for free.
Suddenly I'm seeing all these meetings happening that are being called I'm not part of. It's like, it's great. It's all forward planning meetings. It makes perfect sense that Kevin would be in those, but it's amazing how once the positions are moved,
So
it's just old news.
I mean, in addition to
Which is great, actually.
You're opening a new building. You're moving the middle school East kids into that building. No, yes,
To Stacy.
to Stacy.
And then the middle Stacy students to Woodland.
Stacy students to Woodland. Then there's the middle school East reuse question.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, I got a chuckle out of a recent daily newspaper story that said it's up to the selectmen to decide. And I said, no, it's up to the school committee to vote to give it up first.
That is true. I didn't think you read the newspaper. I thought
okay.
that was the
Well, it's work. Someone has to translate it for it.
Okay.
And then,
I didn't mean like that.
so there's quite a bit on your plate, so. How do you feel about it? I mean,
I'm excited.
Obviously, you took the job,
No,
so-
I'm very excited. I've enjoyed. This is my third year in Milford, and I've really enjoyed it. I enjoy the community. I think we've got a lot of good projects going on. We've got a lot of good momentum. It's kind of an exciting time to be part of a lot of the projects that are
Really?
happening in Milford.
Well, the transition to the new school is going to be really
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Now,
A lot goes behind it, but when you walk through the building and you see it, and you compare it to kind of other buildings that I've seen, for the 3-5 level, and it's just fantastic.
Right, yeah.
and probably you'll hear some taxpayer go, it ought to be at that cost. But that's what buildings cost today. I mean,
It really is. And since the MSBA took over the building process, it's really, and you don't say that very often, but it's really run very, very smoothly.
talk to
community
Aldo
community.
Cecchi on the finance committee and the chairman, and he'll tell you, I mean, as a former superintendent, I can't tell you how many times he's been through this. He just tells you the process is so great. He said, first of all, they force you to come up with the most economic building for what you want.
Absolutely.
And then second of all, the process of reimbursement. See, I go back to the old days when you'd spend the 60 million and
And then
then
they
file
pay
for
you.
the money, and maybe over 20 years to throw it back at you.
Right.
I mean, now you're getting it as you spend it.
And
That's
it's
great.
correct,
That
yeah.
makes all the difference in the world, because when we did that over in Mendon Upton, when we built that school, we built it, committed to the money, and then we started getting the money back
After it was open.
after it was open.
Right.
And you're
So this
cross your
process is
fingers
fantastic.
Yeah.
every year to make sure you're going to get the money.
And there's predictability on every aspect of the
Absolutely.
process, down to like the furniture, the per student per dollar allotment for furniture, for equipment, for heating systems, for technology. It's all
Okay.
laid out, and you have to make decisions through the process, but it's so kind of orchestrated and legislated that I think in a very positive way.
Well, they started doing that part of it a long time ago, where you had to plan. They had a pre-building conference. You had to, the educational plan was what you had to do in place. So you said how many classrooms you're going to have. There's a certain size the classrooms have to be.
Right.
All that stuff. So they did that in a less controlled environment, but now it's really very structured, which is a good thing.
It is, which I think is a good thing, because then you don't get derailed from kind of the big picture.
Right.
So question I have for, you have the whole Woodland Middle School East issue and that movement. I believe I heard you say somewhere you need to do a new education plan, long-range education plan.
Correct.
Because this is kind of the end of the last one.
Correct.
What other challenges are facing you right
I
now?
think the next big project in terms of facilities is going to be the high school. And
Well, it's only, was it now 40 years old?
50, I think.
right. I think that's the next piece we're going to have to look at, just from a facilities perspective. The roof is getting close to the end of its life.
Now, some people have long memories about that roof. I don't know if you've ever heard the story.
No.
The original roof failed, and there was a lengthy lawsuit over it
Okay.
with the original contractor of the building that went on through the, I think, most of the 70s.
Really?
Yeah.
We won't hire them.
I don't think they're in business anymore. But
I think that's
talk
gonna
to
be
Jerry
probably-
Moody, because he was brand new as a town council when that came in
Oh wow. Okay.
and handling that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's probably, like, from a school community perspective, that's probably going to be our next big project down the line.
That's going to be a
that we look at.
humongous project.
It is.
It's going to be really very, very big. Very big.
Well, you're just talking rehab. You're not talking.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a renovation, for some structural, like the roof and a few other areas, and then I think, some renovations to some of the classrooms and some of those pieces as well.
Yeah.
And technology renovation.
Well, that's an ongoing. I mean,
Yeah.
we're actually making a lot of progress in that area. The fiber loop is in place across the district, and we're actually seeing teachers are kind of seeing that on the ground in terms of connectivity and speed, which is great. There'll be a rollout of the Chromebooks at Woodland School next year, and then we'll also be developing a plan for kind of the rollout from kind of middle school up to high school. And we have a number of teachers piloting the Chromebooks, and we're getting tremendous positive reviews.
That sounds good. Bob, you think you're leaving the district in good hands?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think this is the, there's never that right time to go, and to be honest, You know, it's interesting, in August, I wouldn't have told you that I was looking, you know, and I wasn't looking. It was just a matter of, you know.
Somebody
phone
called, it
call
was the
and-
right opportunity?
Yeah, and, you know, turned over that stone and ended up, you know, getting the job in Weston. So for me, it's a good time, 18 years in Milford, 9 as superintendent.
Okay, in the 9 years, can you point to, like, what was the single biggest challenge?
For me, probably getting tuition-free full-day kindergarten through was probably the biggest one and the most impactful change, you know, in reflecting back on my career, because that made the difference in so many lives of students and families. There was a small window of opportunity for that quality full-day kindergarten grant to pay for that transition, and the town had to then absorb that after that year one sort of incentive. And then that money dried up almost a year later. And had we not acted the year that we did, it's my second year into the job. Because for the longest time, it had been grade 1 had been the great equalizer. So we had a half-day, tuition-free half-day kindergarten program and a tuition-based full-day program. Very affordable, I think, as you compare it to other communities for a
Right,
full-day
but then
program.
the kids all,
But you still had
came
the
in at
sort of
kindergarten.
have and have not.
Yeah.
And then if kids didn't have preschool experiences, you know, some, as you know, may have 1, 2, or even 3 years of preschool before coming into the public school. So potentially you could have a kid, a student who starts in grade 1 having only had his only exposure to education was a half-day program of kindergarten, versus a student who had parents maybe had more means, had three years of full-day preschool, a full-day kindergarten program, now entering grade 1. Those are two very different kids when you're talking about, you know, a 6-year-old. So for me, that was probably the greatest and most challenging accomplishment,
Yeah.
because it involved staffing and forward budgeting.
was I get to tell people, honestly, I went to kindergarten a century ago. It was half-day. I remember it well. I
half-day.
actually remember my kindergarten teacher's name. But,
Well, I didn't, wasn't as long ago for me, but I remember my kindergarten teacher as well. And
You were a century ago too, baby.
a century ago, yeah, not as far as you even.
well,
It
in the
was,
last century.
In the last century.
Well, they used slate tables when like tablets when I went.
And half-day kindergarten was what I had as well. I think it was pretty common. In fact, a lot of families, there was a number of families that choiced out of Milford when we made the transition to full-day kindergarten, because they weren't ready to let their 5-year-old go to school a full day. They
Yeah.
maybe had a stay-at-home parent who was going to be there and say, I want my child with me for the other half of the day. 2.5
Yeah.
hours is sufficient.
Here's an interesting question for both of you guys. At recent school committee meetings, it was discussed, you have people choicing out of the Milford system, and the ones you surveyed were primarily at the Woodland level. Do you think with a new building, you're going to get people like that to stay?
You know, I think two things could potentially happen. One, I think our retention could increase, the percentage of families that kind of maintain in the system. So I think that's going to
Yeah.
improve our long-term school choice numbers. I think a new building is always attractive. You know, it's going to have, you know, the latest technology.
A little more sizzle.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's going to be appealing. I don't think it's necessarily going to reverse the numbers immediately, but I think it will help kind of long-term
Yeah.
to, you know, maybe shift the tide a little bit.
Okay. Any major changes, since curriculum has been your forte for the last 3 years? Any major changes coming up in the near future, or staying the course with where you are?
One thing we're looking at is increasing, and this isn't going to sound dramatic, but I think it is going to be dramatic to some degree, is we're trying to almost reverse the percentage of students taking algebra in 8th grade. Right now it's about a 70, 75, 25 split in terms of 8th grade kind of pre-algebra versus algebra. And so we want to kind of reverse that over the next few years and try to make it about 80% of the students, 70 to 80% of the students taking algebra, 20 to 30%, you know, kind of in the pre-algebra, 8th grade mathematics kind of track. And then that actually impacts us all the way down, because we have to prepare to get to that point. And that's going to open up, algebra is kind of the gatekeeping course in terms of higher education and access to higher level courses. And the more prepared we can have students before they even enter high school, the more likely they are to enter careers where they're in the math, the science,
That's the
technology,
STEM,
engineering.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is where, in this state, the jobs are.
Absolutely. So I think in the next year or two, that's going to be one of the biggest changes that we kind of are pushing forward.
And the transition that we're doing is really speaking to all that as well. It's going to make life a lot easier when you have grades 6 through 8 in the same house, and you have grades 3 through 5 in the same. You have in this model, you have now really kind of an early childhood elementary program, K through 2, an intermediate elementary model in a 3-5 school. You can do things in a 3-5 school that are
Right.
more complicated to do at a K2, like a student council. You can have a student
Right.
council in a 3-5 school where it would be tough to pull that off, although second graders around this time of the year, would have that kind of skill set than a traditional 6-8 middle school. So we've done a lot of transition work over the last couple of years, this year particularly, to really link up 8th grade with Stacy, feel part of that staff. Everything from potluck lunches to staff meetings to curriculum coordination and vertical alignment and planning sessions.
And there's a continuity that you get that kind of, East has been an island unto itself for quite a while, so bringing them into a faculty at Stacy I think is going to help with some of those alignment pieces, because it's much easier to communicate with somebody who's down the hallway than down the street.
Yeah, geographically, you're right in terms of being an island. I mean, it's not just curriculum, it's sort of, you have everybody at Stacy come streaming out of the building, and then, down the street, there's this other group coming out.
Right.
And there's a tremendous amount of coordination. So Kevin and I, for our mutual goal this year, we set was just to see the transition process through as seamlessly as we possibly can.
Well, you
And
guys are the co-principals, aren't you?
Yeah, we're on top of it.
so
So
absolutely.
we didn't anticipate being co-principals, plus our current roles, plus transitioning to new roles, all in the same year. That's a little bit more than we were signing up for. So that explains some of the white hair and bags under my eyes. And
I still look great. I don't know what you're talking about.
Ooh,
Ooh, there you go. Say
I
that.
didn't notice I didn't see the Christmas song this year. Did that come
Oh,
on
yeah,
the website?
I did a "O Come All You Faithful." I'll have to get you a copy of that. I apologize.
Oh, gee, I thought that went by the wayside.
No,
this
no,
year.
no. There's always time for music. You have to make time for that. But you
You
mentioned
won't get that
earlier-
with me though, because I make "Happy Birthday" unrecognizable if I sing it. So
It is true. He's
No
limited.
musical background.
He's limited in
Very
the
limited.
talent department.
Very
Probably
limited.
not a bad thing. That's probably.
We're still going to see musicals put on by the faculty, or
Yeah, you will. You'll still see that.
That's a great
Just
tradition,
as
and that's
long as
something we
Kevin's
want
not
to
part
keep.
of it. That's
They're like, maybe you could be the crew in the back.
right, give him a lighting job.
Or
The,
news calls or something.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
The transition work though is pretty significant because you're moving grades 3 and 4 from their old building to their new building, and that's
Right.
the move. Well, no, as you mentioned, we're moving grade 5 out of Stacy, and when that building is when Woodland, we have to get grade 5 out before we can move grade 8 down. So where do you put all the grade 5 stuff? There's a lot of moving logistics. to this.
Logistics that have become very
then when
troublesome.
all that's done, you're going to have the kids up at New Woodland watch them tear down Old Woodland.
Well, that's true too.
'Cause
And plus,
I-
we have to move logistically, move the 8th grade staff to Stacy. But remember, this 8th grade is not part of the project. Technically, it's a 3-5 school.
Right.
So we've had to kind of coordinate the same movers so that we're moving. We have consistent people, the floor plans, and then there's the staff piece. They all want to know where they're going. Do they have a job? Is there a consolidation effort as a result? So
And
there's-
you're crossing the fiscal years for the town, so
Yeah,
the
right.
finance folks have to take into account, there might be a little extra.
Well, and that's a
stuff
great
needed
point. As
there.
we're developing the budget for this year and planning for it, we have to hold operational costs for Middle School East, even though it's not a school that's in our school continuum. We've still got to pay. Someone still has to pay to keep it, lit and heated and safe and watertight. So you just can't abandon it. So there's a cost to that. And
I think, what is
still
it,
some
the
re-
consultant's draft report says it would be great for medical offices.
Yeah, there's been a few different variations.
With a
mixed
gym.
use. Yeah, I've heard all kinds of things.
Because I know the town doesn't want to lose the gym.
Yeah, the gym is significant there. There's some historical aspect to the building. Plus, you have to consider the fact that it's on Main Street. Whatever you do with that, you don't want it boarded up. Nobody
No,
wants to
'cause of-
mothball
no.
the facility.
Well, my joke is I always wonder how come the ACLU hasn't come in and said, you have a public school building that says "for God" on it, in Latin, for God and for country, on the Main Street side.
That's
That's
right.
true.
We still use money that says "In God We Trust," so we haven't. we
No,
haven't
but
lost
every
all
time
hope.
I drive by it, I'm sitting there going, the irony of it from its old Catholic school days.
Kevin's not going to bring the picture of the Pope that he has in his office. At the moment.
Well, you took that look one personally, didn't you?
Oh,
Tough crowd.
Tough-
Tough crowd.
tough crowd.
I don't know, I stick up for the Irish people. We're both Kevins.
There's nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
No, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, so the moves are significant for the transitioning that's happening with the schools,
And the detail behind it is, you look at it and it seems like it's a simple process. You're just moving one grade
Yeah.
and shifting them over, and just the logistics of moving just an art classroom or a science classroom and what you have to do to prepare
Oh, it's just
those
the same as
classrooms
what
at Stacy.
Milford Regional Hospital went through recently when they opened up the new ER. I mean, they moved over a function at a time.
Yeah.
Not, it wasn't like, hey, let's move the whole ER over. It
Well,
was,
they had part of it.
it was
so-
a function moving every week and getting certified, and then another one coming in and another one coming in.
Right.
The difference with them is, though, they left the other space vacant for now. You guys are moving everything around.
Right.
Right, and in a short time frame, we have to start school, and hopefully we'll, whether we'll be cooperative and we can be out early.
The logistics on a new building are just nightmarish. They just really are. I mean, and the details, the simple things that you just forget, things that you overlook.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden you move in, the teacher sits in the classroom and goes, oh, this doesn't work. Or I don't have a drop. My computer's supposed to sit in here, but the drop's over there. What do I do? There's just the
Now,
logistics.
plus the fact is guys running around with a punch list as
Yeah,
people are
right.
moving.
Right, and that'll be part of the fall. We'll be kind of, working through that kind of.
And then it's taking all the technology that's out of the existing building at Woodland
And
School,
redeploying it.
and all the while making sure that we're still educating kids. June is not going to be, hey, this is the moving month, everybody. School's dismissed.
And-
we're educating right through June until school's out, and so we're
And-
not having kids pack boxes.
And you'll have
for
guys
teachers.
working in the building, working on a punch list while classes are going on, which means 20 years ago wasn't a big deal. But today,
Corey, check
they
everybody.
have to be Corey checked, which can create another whole level of
Absolutely.
problems.
There's not one person on the job currently, by the way, who's not
Corey
Corey checked
checked.
and fingerprinted. It's a requirement.
That's a good thing.
Even though they're already in a quarantined area with no interaction at all with students,
Doesn't matter, they have
it's
to be.
still a stipulation that we put in place as part of the school building committee.
And that's a
Everybody's
good thing.
Chloride, everybody's fingerprinted, because we don't need any room for error.
Well, what it does is it gives you the ability to be ahead of the curve. So you're anticipated these things. So
That's right.
it's not going to be a surprise when has to be done on a state level where the state requires it.
Or
So-
if something happens.
And if something happens, you're protected. So
That's it.
it's very prudent to do that.
One of our
Very
concerns going into that, though, was, we didn't want to inadvertently hold up construction progress as a result of fingerprinting being done, but fortunately, they were able to keep that.
Well, as long as the contractors and all the subs and everybody knew that was going to be a requirement,
They went out and did it, and there was no pushback. And
no pushback,
Yeah.
and you were ahead of the
Well,
curve.
it's unfortunate, but I think everybody recognizes that's where society is today.
yeah, it's.
Um,
It is a tough part of our job, but I'm sure there's 100 things we've forgotten or didn't even know about that we'll discover. But as best we can, try to anticipate some of these things. Where the biggest thing for us is making sure we keep staff morale up, because there's a lot of when you don't know,
There's that anxiety.
there's that anxiety,
Yep.
change. Something's going to change. They're not going to need me anymore.
Change
One of
makes
those.
people anxious, it does.
Well, that's exactly the case. Exactly the case. Change is sometimes very uncomfortable for people. Generally, the new people that come on board are afraid of it because they're just getting their career started. they're
And the
going-
older people are afraid of it because they're older.
They're older, and the old people are.
You get settled.
Now, for something entirely different, which I just recently saw, the mayor of New York changed some policies in New York about punishment on correction of kids who are violent in the school or caught with drugs. No longer do the onboard police or the school security people turn them over to the police and suspend them. Now they get a piece of paper that says, "Oh, you violated the rules. Don't do it again." Which is, the mayor decided that we're no longer going to suspend people.
Whereas in Massachusetts, aren't you now supposed to have an alternative school to place in-house suspension kids in?
Yeah, there's a number of new rules and regulations across the state that you're required to kind of provide education alternatively, and that can take a number of forms. It could be through tutoring, it could be through a different online platforms, it could be through an alternative kind of school within a school model. We do still have the right to suspend and expel, but the threshold for that has
Gone
risen.
up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because there are schools around that specifically focused on those kind of students, those kind of that they get those kind of kids in it, which is a tougher place.
I've seen you guys as pretty decisive when you have something happening in terms of getting someone out of the system.
Yeah,
I've never seen you guys delay.
on a
So-
disciplinary action?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, whether it's staff or
You take these situations and matters very seriously, but I think you have to kind of respond based on the facts that you have at the
Yep.
time and make the best decisions that you can.
But that's one of the questions that goes, because of the added security, because of the added concern for safety of the students, that kind of thing. These things start to rise to the top, because they used to be noise level, but
Yeah.
now all of a sudden everybody has a level of paranoia.
Well, and social media and the media in general too, you have, a situation that might have been just a local issue suddenly becomes a national issue because
Right.
it gets picked up.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I
social
can think of
social
the
media's
kid
been
with
a
the
challenge.
zap zap, but
right.
for every person that criticized the decision, what I always remind them, it's not the kid going zap zap, it's what the people looking at it perceived, not what the kid did, but what people perceived.
Right. There's multiple, it's hard for us, whether it's a personnel matter or it's a student matter, is that we're protecting everybody's privacy rights under the law.
Right.
Doesn't allow us to tell the full story. So
Right.
you're left to let, the media, particularly the social media, run its course.
And you can't do anything
And
about
you
it.
can't do anything about it except sit back and watch the dialogue. I suppose you could interject. Once you begin to do that, now it's expected that's going to be your practice.
Well, I always figured if people ever knew the real story behind half of what goes on, they'd go, oh, but it can't be told.
Well,
Tom
that's
O'Laughlin
exact-
does that well. As a police chief, I think Tom O'Laughlin sets the record straight well. I think
Yes.
I think he does a very good job with the social media piece. That
I also must say that you've been very good about not disclosing any details. Whenever our reporters go at you and say what really happened, you've been very good about hiding.
Well,
and-
actually, we usually go and tell them what really happened.
I mean, you've always been very good about that, and I must say that you've been very good about protecting people's privacy and their rights.
yeah, thanks. Even my own at one point, when I had the opportunity where I could have
Yes.
Yes.
You've
given
done
my
very
side
good.
of the story, I've kept it to myself, and that's hard. It's been a hard lesson in some cases. For
Hard to
me.
bite your tongue,
It is,
very hard.
but I always believe that this too shall pass, and usually it does.
The older I get, the more I realize sometimes it's just better to be quiet.
Yeah.
No news is good
And
news.
if you know me a long time, you know that's pretty hard for me.
Yes, I would say that that's probably a conservative thing to say. But I know that there have been a lot of times when there's, to err on the side of not saying anything is a better way to go.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the question is, in your new role, are you ready for things like that? Where you might be the brunt of criticism that might not be
True.
deserved, but you have to take it given the circumstances.
I think it's part of the job. And I've been in those situations as a principal a couple of times here as an assistant superintendent. So I feel like I've had experience kind of with, because I think if you're in schools for any length of time, you're going to have issues that are controversial, pique the interest of the community that you really just can't comment on for a variety of reasons.
Can't talk about it. You just
Correct.
have to let it.
Correct. And even though whatever's
the
being
truth
spun
is.
out there
Yes.
is not necessarily accurate, you just kind of have to let it play itself out to some degree.
Yeah.